Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Podge Thomas. I am a graduating MPA. Thank you. And I'm here tonight to introduce Kat Vining. Yes. Whew. Okay, when I came to Presidio 3 years ago, I met Kat for the first time. They were hungry for a way to expand their reach towards social change. They believed in justice for all, but struggled to publicly articulate their beliefs and feelings. And Kat just really didn't have a voice at that time. The next 3 years weren't easy, and Kat fought internally to marry a foundation of social justice with an academic framework that was heavily weighted toward environmental sustainability. As a woman of color, I know that white allies are hard to come by. But I'm proud to say that Kat has found their voice. Kat, where are you? You're right there. Whew. I love Kat. I'm honored to say that, Kat, you found your voice and that you have stood next to me and you have used that voice so that I didn't have to. Please welcome to the stage my friend and ally, Kat Vining.
I cried for like 5 minutes after the first time I heard that. Growing up, that's me. I thought I lived in a community where the only thing that impacted the ability of me and my peers to succeed was our own willingness to work hard. I was taught that racists were people like the KKK and Southern hillbillies, and that I was a good white person that didn't see color or use labels. I was taught to treat everyone equally, regardless of skin color, gender, ability, but that it was inappropriate to talk about race in mixed company. And I was taught about our country's racist history, and that after the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil Rights Movement, we were finally living in a post-racist society. Who else was raised this way? That's what I thought. So I grew up to be just like this college kid, saying things like, at the end of the day, we're all human. I can't see how my race has shaped my life. My race exists, but it doesn't define who I am. Some might say, great, we are all human. We all do deserve to be treated equally. What's wrong with this? The issue is this is not the world that we live in. Very far from it. The wage gap between black and white workers is increasing. In 2015, it was at an all-time high of 27%. Today, the average white household holds a whopping 13 times more wealth than the average white household. And while 5% of white men will be jailed, 1 in 3 black men will be incarcerated in their lives. These social and economic disparities are no coincidence. This country was founded on a system of oppression designed to disenfranchise people of color for the social and economic benefit of white individuals. And although the impacts look very different today, we are still stuck in this cycle, where based on historic atrocities, our institutions perpetuate disparate treatment. We continue to internalize our dominance and suppression. We legitimize the status quo by teaching our children that race is not important. If we are to achieve racial equity in this country, we must interrupt this cycle. And it starts with education. Across the board, White individuals are far less likely to report that race relations are bad, that race needs to be talked about more, or even that more changes are needed in this country to improve racial equity. Clearly, there is a misalignment in the perception of white individuals and the lived experiences of people of color. And it is because we have been raised to be colorblind, to not see color, or to pretend that it doesn't matter. But by denying race and racism, we perpetuate it. By failing to address racial inequities, we maintain them. Research shows that colorblind child rearing is so pervasive in this country that there is virtually no other credible strategy that exists. And research supports this. 84% of white millennials report that their family taught them to be colorblind. 30%, only 30% grew up in families that actually talked openly about race. And as a result, 73% of us still say that we should actively be striving for colorblindness. So if we're going to interrupt this, let's start from the beginning. Research shows that children are far more willing to engage in conversations about race. But the most common argument against talking to our children about race and racism is that somehow it's not age appropriate. But regardless of if we talk to our children about race, they will develop racial identities and beliefs. In infancy, children begin interacting with others based on cultural cues that they get from their family. By 4 years old, we are internalizing suppression and superiority. By 6, 7, and 8, we're amazingly capable of engaging in activities to interrupt individual and cultural racism. And by 9 years old, our racial beliefs are cemented into our unconscious. By only 9 years old, it is increasingly difficult to change racial attitudes, beliefs, and actions. There are 3 general ways people agree that white folks can engage in the movement for racial justice. We can talk to each other about race. We can call out racist acts when we see them, and we can support organizations and movements led by people of color. But each of these things necessitates a fundamental education about what racism looks like today, how to talk about it, and how to deal with it when you see it. And I don't know about you, but I certainly was not raised with any of those tools. And I can't tell you how many white people I've spoken to that said, I would love to be engaged in social justice issues, but I don't feel comfortable, I'm not sure where to start, or I don't even know if it's my place. But it is. What we need is a program that brings together children, parents, and adults to formally integrate whiteness education into our conversations and curricula. We need a foundational awareness, a collective awareness, and an increased capacity of communities to think, speak, and act as anti-racist allies to people of color. Of course, this won't be easy. There is very little scholarly work available to show how this should be done. And it is us, those that have been raised by colorblind institutions and colorblind communities, that are faced with trying to figure out how to do this for our own white children. But there's good news. Even clumsy or potentially incorrect conversations can have vastly positive impacts on combating negative racial attitudes and actions in children. And we don't need to have all of the answers. Struggling through it together with our children is undoubtedly a better strategy than leaving it to chance. So where do we start? In 2014, the San Francisco Unified School District released its Vision 2025, where, among other things, it committed to achieving racial equity in its communities. And what I've seen is that to date, the majority of the focus has been on providing support and resources to students and families of color. And while this is equally, if not more important, to promoting equity, complementary energy must be spent towards raising critically aware white children. And herein lies our opportunity. We have a school district that is ready, willing, and committed to achieve racial equity in its communities. We have a population that is statistically more willing to engage in these conversations, and we have a cohort of white children at risk of being socialized into a culture of white dominance, if not presented with an alternative anti-racist ideology. I believe that by using San Francisco as a pilot location where conditions are ripe for success, we can prototype, test, and develop a universally applicable curriculum that can be applied across the country. That's also me. So I set out on this journey a few months ago to explore the very small issue of what is the role of white people in the movement for racial justice. And today have found myself in a place that I definitely did not expect to be. And as much as I've tried over the last few months to make myself an expert in childhood education, I am very far from it. I need a team of topic experts, advanced curriculum developers, and a board of educators, parents, and school administrators. And that is why I am before you today. To ask you to join me in ending the cycle. To ask you to join me in raising a new generation of white youth. To ask you to join me in increasing the capacity of our white communities to think, speak, and act as anti-racist allies. Thank you.